Hi everyone, and hi Zuzana Husarova or Husarova, I don't know. We're really happy to have you, Sue, here. Zuzana is a poet that works in the areas of sound poetry, digital poetry, also poetry published in books. She's also a scholar. She teaches at Bratislava, Brno, and Vienna. And she has been for a lot of years making a lot of, I don't know, links between these different ways of thinking about poetry and performing poetry. We're really happy to have you here, Susana, as we were having memories some minutes ago. Martin and I were very lucky to participate in the second edition of your Sound Poetry Festival at Bratislava. It was a great moment, and I especially like it because it was a great link between some uh, some practices from contemporary music, more related to voices and expanded vocals, and also sound poetry. It's a link that is not usually connected, but I really enjoyed. I remember sharing with people that came from choruses and vocal arts and also computers and all that. And Martin and I were in between that, and we really enjoyed. So welcome to this meeting, and please do whatever you like.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate this format, and I'm really grateful to be here. So thank you everyone for joining us, whether you are now live or later on YouTube. I'm pulling with my finger, rewinding parallel screens in quadrophonic, layered universe. But you control flashes of constant dimensions in a spiral, strings of ergodicity. The ceiling softened and strained and is falling. The circle on the ceiling just look up. We are lying in ourselves, in the flats, on the Zoom, on the chair, and on YouTube, and on the river, and in our beds. We are falling into ourselves as flashes in a disco ball. Soft and slippery, soft and soft, and eyes after a memory. Falling, choppy contours, full impressions. When you turn the light on, will we end? When we cannot swim, we reach the bottom, different view, and understand. Feel the cue. Primal C is a question of setup. Key to heterotopy.
introduction to heterotopy. Time is over. A track has shifted. A red cell says, immerse. Can you hear it? Heterotopy shifted. Golden cause. Heterotopy shifted.
I will absorb you. This was my dream, and now it is your story. Story of my dream. My finger, your eyes, my mouth, your ears. Who reads my words, listening here? Where does the vision end, and where does the poetry begin? noosphere. Can you see it? Please, 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 You don't say. Can we stay here? This interior from our outside. We all suck our own sugar cube. Perhaps you're not even sleeping. Welcome to the fictional worlds, to the foil equivalent of metalepsy, to greenhouse tents, to the island of the true fake, where the fake tomorrows are just a smell apart. But here, a black hole starbursted with us. Please remember it on the way out. Thank you.
Ooh. Thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you.
Really, really wonderful. What trips? Incredible. Yeah. Nice, nice, nice. I have to say, like always, like shining and pretty. And the first sound was your son, no? Your babies when they were like asking you.
When
For, huh?
she was then like 7 months, and she was playing with the recorder.
Oh, really?
So I recorded her playing with the recorder.
But I remember that piece. Did you show in Festina Lent in Paris once? No?
No,
No, no.
no, but that was in the first part of it was part of the QR. That was the small book with the QR. The Radio O was
Yeah, yeah,
organizing.
yeah. Okay. Then you put that you mix that new piece with that
I
one
did there this part because I talk there quite a lot about fictional worlds and metalepsies.
yeah.
So in my piece, so I figured that it would be also a good idea to give there one part of my older piece as this metaleptic, metafictional reference.
Yeah, that's great. And also how you mix the different moment of sound, and also your publications, your really beautiful books that you make. And I really feel a connection between your sound, your performance, your life, your books. It's really like a kind of, and everything is different, but a kind of system of your work that I don't know how can you tell us about that kind of connection that you have between those different elements.
Um, Maybe everyone has something like that. I don't feel anyhow special in any context. I think all those people who work in different media have these connections somehow. So even the visual poetry books that I did in the past, I cannot really that much associate with them right now as I did in the past. So I think I moved. But I try to also kind of um, find some inspiration from the life, especially I didn't do it that much before, but now having the child around, you cannot really escape from that environment. And I was trying different techniques of how to be creative, and I found out that if I recall them and use them somehow, that it seems productive to me in a way, because I mean the whole piece is supposed to give you some idea of either sleeping or putting you into a different emotional state, and that is what I do like every evening, but to a different person. So I was trying to maybe get that um, kind of projection of the child into other people, like this conversation with the child that you have, but she doesn't understand everything, but she still talks in her own language. It is also how we perceive as viewers or listeners some things, like you don't understand everything, but you still create your own reality. Maybe it calms you down, maybe it doesn't, but still my effort was somehow like a calming or soothing.
Mm.
I don't know if it worked, but
Yeah, yeah, it's really maybe Pythagoras said that when a woman became mother, in a way she arrived to another kind of sweetness or joy. And I really like appreciate that. I feel that in that performance that I saw you that several before, but then now it's a kind of I don't know, connection with the more with the feelings, with the emotions, in a way. Do you feel a changement of experience of perception in the world after that?
um, I feel more present in the world. Like you are constantly present in the now, and you experience things more. And I also try to create like this environment where it all somehow tries to make sense, whether it's just my imagination or whether it's just my fiction. But I try to kind of like organize it, that it's like those little puzzles that you put together, and somehow you can create something out of it, and hoping that it works also for the others, not just for yourself. So that is maybe that how I wanted, like in this more complexity of the sounds and the words, to create uh, maybe this calming of of the rhythm, or kind of like being for a moment in some stasis that is different from your normal um, experience.
Mm.
Also, the words were done not in a completely conscious mental state.
Mm.
So it all refers to um, trying to get outside of this normal self, like the idea that I also have of art, that it should move you in some way, and you can also get this feeling of the movement, either for the presence, or you can also experience maybe something else, something not really magical, but something else.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and
awesome.
related to that, how does the experience of, I mean, just playing with your kids, like when they are starting to make their first sounds, or they're starting to talk, uh, playing with the words, how has that experience influenced you, or has been incorporated to the sound poetry that you're doing? Because uh, we usually say this like joking, but a lot of the sounds that we do when we are making sound poetry might seem as childish sounds, right? Or I don't know, like that you are learning to speak. How is that relationship?
Also, one of the reasons I also wanted to have children was to do these linguistic experiments on them and learning from them. Um,
They are part of
I
the
also
experiment.
That's exactly that's part of it. Uh, Also, like I record them. That's one thing, but I'd also write them down. Like when I also kind of write written poetry, just written poetry, and I also kind of like put down the things that they do that's sometimes not completely logical in a sentence. So I use it also in my writing practice. Um, very it influences me in a way how they express the words that they stress some other qualities in the words that you do as as the normal speaking person, because you are learned to speak in a certain way, but this way they just put emphasis wherever they feel like. They also my younger daughter, she wants to give a statement, but she always asks. So she always gives questions, which is also an interesting way of dealing with the world, just completely asking questions in normal statements. Um, and there are different ways, like how they cut the words, how they don't make everything reasonable in a language. That is also quite interesting. But I also didn't really want this to be about children. I wanted to be for like adults and viewers. I just wanted kind of this calming at the beginning and not being able to understand everything, that it's fine the way, kind of getting that experience.
No, it's about the language at the end. And
Yes.
another thing I like very much is what that you could tell in the piece you made, like there were different sections or different moods. And for me, it was, I don't know, I thought it like when you're hearing a sonata and sometimes there's a slow movement, then a more rhythmic movement, and then like you're changing or contrasting different emotions. Like it's not the same mood all the time, of course.
Yeah, I also wanted to be kind of like a journey through falling asleep and going through a dream, but then I wanted to have there also like a surrealistic dreams or magical dreams, um, and then this kind of like a somehow nightmarish waking up, or just some realization at the end, and then you wake up and realize that whether it was fake or not fake, or whether it was fiction or it was just a dream, doesn't really matter, but this kind of like effects all together. Um, that was the idea. Also, kind of like studied quite a lot about the idea of how sleep is like the last thing that still remains not completely touched by capitalism. So it still remains like a private space for us, even though like we still have as humanity still less and less of sleep. It still hasn't been conquered because we still don't really know what exactly we are doing during sleeping, how exactly our dreams constructed, etc. So it's still like not completely revealed and therefore not completely monitorized. So that was also like this. It is really somehow magical that you fall asleep and everything that is happening during the time.
And also, I think something that I like about your work in general is that you don't draw like different lines between poetry and narrative or other kinds of literature, because sometimes we speak as poetry as like some very specific state. But at least in my case, I love reading novels and fiction and essays and other ways of literature. And you always are relating like this to dreams or, I don't know, science fiction and all that. I mean, I think that at least in your case, they are very well connected, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I try to have it that way, that it's not just kind of classical poetry. I also have there the part of the kind of like classical poetry. I also have there more narrative
Mm.
oriented type where it should lead you somewhere. And also to your previous question, like I have it this structured. It's also I'm using this kind of live creating of sounds that is done by using Hollyhock. And there I have like the sections that I go through, and I put there my own samples with like
Yeah.
my syllables that I get to mix, etc., to create some type of atmosphere.
Great. Yeah, because I don't know. It's funny that we always talk about sound poetry and not sound literature in general. I was thinking that. I mean, you could think of radio theater or I don't know, like sound novels. I don't know if there's so much work that you could put in that category, but I mean, it's available. It's possible, I think.
Yeah, I still don't think that this is like a complete narrative.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
of course, but
uh,
like
there are
it hasn't. I mean, if we want to go across the borders and limits, I mean, poetry doesn't have to be a specific limit. I think into the possibilities of language.
yeah.
Well, does anyone wants to make any comment? Uh, say hi. I don't know, whatever.
Hi.
Hello, Zoe.
Really loved that. And yeah,
Great.
thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Alan.
much. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I was and also very interested in what you were saying. Because yeah, when you started with the baby crying, it's yeah, it's also kind of like a demand hearing a child's voice, isn't it? It's also a kind of call to work, and so I was also thinking about work and rest in your piece, and yeah, maybe that's also a bit connected with what you're saying about sleep as this sort of escape from those demands, but also there's I suppose the kinds of um, uh, work in terms of bringing up children, and yeah, that are the kinds of work that are not always recognized in the same way, that I thought are given a really interesting space in your piece, and I thought that was fascinating. And I was also thinking about some work by Holly Pester a few years ago on the lullaby, and thinking about the lullaby as a work song, and yeah, sort of yeah, thinking about different kinds of labour and the different ways in which they're valued, and yeah, so I'm trying to turn this into a question. It's kind of more of an observation, but yeah, so I wondered, yeah, whether you whether you see yeah some kind of transformation happening in your work, that's yeah, in your piece, that has got to do with the idea of work and rest, and yeah, is that yeah.
I really like your comments all over these whole sessions. So they are this kind of very thoughtful, getting very deep into the piece. Yes, I also kind of like use these two at the very beginning, those two lullabies. Those are lullabies, this Dinom Danom and Kom Kom Kominar.
Yeah.
Those are two lullabies or nursery rhymes that my child really requires me to sing. So she just says like, sometimes I feel like a jukebox because she just says like, Dinom Danom, and then after 10 seconds she says, no, Kom Kom Kominar. And also, normally you say Kominar, which is like a chimney duster, but she changed it into Konya, which doesn't make any sense. But I quite like this idea of Ni, which is like no, and Ya, which is me. So I changed it into basically there being no me in the process of putting the baby to sleep. So it's like constantly debating where is the me and where isn't the me. And there I have those shouts and those calms where you have to kind of like get more distant from yourself, but still be there because you cannot escape. So yeah, I really had it there, especially in the first part with the baby. Then I moved away from it because I didn't really want this to be about babies. But that was, yeah, really, really your deep insight into how I also meant it.
Yeah, but but also there's that sort of tension between the I suppose the sort of bursts of language and then also kind of echo and things going backwards as well and pauses and yes, it's very dynamic in that way. So there's sort of action and then pause or rest and in that kind of rhythm, but not an even rhythm, but a pattern of things happening and not happening. Yeah, I thought was something about time and how we how we have to use it. And
yeah, I also somehow wanted it to be a kind of like a dialogical situation where somebody might be asking and answering at the same time. So there is also this kind of like workload and free time where you kind of balance the things, like you answer in one way and you answer in the other way, but they both make sense because they are just with the expression and the way you say it, you make this difference.
Yeah.
Whether you make question or whether what type of statement you make, it really makes a difference in that whole situation. With the one, for example, please come in, depends on how you say it and how you answer, if it is a question or if it is like invitation or if it is, I don't know, forcing somebody to do something. And I wanted to have there these tensions. I didn't want to have it all over because I also really like the idea of surprise. So I wanted to have there like a normal poem, then all of a sudden you have this kind of like a dialogue happening.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Zuzana, that was wonderful. And the questions, by the way, are just amazing. So it's like, I don't know, I'm just going to ask a question that's sort of like about what hasn't been talked about, just because I thought about it. Like the composition visually for you. Like I noticed quite a lot where your camera is right now. We can also see you in the background, or sometimes we saw your hand or something on another screen, or I don't know if it's a mirror or whatever. And you're also like very much in the dark there. And it was really accentuated in this one part of tonight where it was almost like the vision stalled, like the video might have stalled, but we just heard you because you were so still. Yeah. But there was all this sound going on, but you hardly moved whatsoever. And I thought that was really interesting. And I was just wondering if you thought about that.
The thing is that I have here another computer. So I have two computers, one through which it is the one with Zoom, and then I have another computer in with the program. So I was constantly doing something with my right hand that you don't see, but with the mouse.
Yeah.
So I had here 10 different sections that I was going through and doing their different things, whatever. But that's interesting because I was probably concentrating on clicking those different syllables or something that still stopped. I haven't thought about it at all.
Yes, but also,
thought,
correct me if I'm wrong, but at that time, or much of that time, you were also saying something, but it was very kind of fine. You hardly had to move your mouth or something. And that's what kind of made it, just as a visual field, quite interesting. And yeah, anyway, I was wondering, are you conscious of that in your other work? The sort of visual aspect?
regarding the visual aspect, I really wanted you all guys to see some Prague. So that's why, like, my brother lives in an apartment where you see, like, you have the whole Prague basically in your hands. So I wanted to accent that, like, since we cannot move and we are all stuck in our apartment, so I'll at least get you to see the view to Prague. That's why I also kind of like had it all dark and just had one light so that I see the program. That was done on purpose.
Yeah.
I didn't really kind of didn't see what I'm doing. I haven't done any of those other interesting things. They just happened. Thank you.
And what can you tell us about you mentioned earlier the software you're using? I always like doing these nerd questions, so please, can you tell us more about the around the?
Yes, so it's called Using Hollyhock, where I have kind of different settings for different things, for like looping or playing those granulators, etc., etc. Like before, I had much more physical setup. I mean, because of a lot of traveling, I realized it's much better to have it all there. And I really like the program because it is visually beautiful. It is gives you this movement of those different physical objects that create sounds as well. So it's for me really interesting to work with it because of also this kind of nice visual background of it. So yeah, I really like working here because it's mostly for like audio creation. It's not it's for musicians mostly. But you also have there some other aspects like light design, etc., etc. I don't want to kind of promote software, but yeah, I really like it. I have been using it for a long time.
Yeah, I guess I remember you told me about it some years ago. So now we can have a discount of 50% if we buy it, something like that. I guess we can show a coupon or something like that. Yeah. Anyone wants to make another comment?
Zuzana, I was wondering, first of all, I really enjoyed, thank you so much for this great performance. When you were making that piece with your daughter, when you were recording her, did you see that as a collaboration, or it was kind of chronicling, keeping a memory and, you know, having it as a kind of piece of a memoir about sleep, about speaking relationship language, or you saw that two of you are doing that?
I have been recording the babies. Like some people kind of take a lot of photos. I like to record them. So I had like both of my babies have some months where they have more recordings, some months where they have less. I haven't been recording them for quite a long time because I haven't had that much time, and now they are too much aware of the recorder. So I really like the idea from 1 year or from like 2 months until 1 year, because they had all this babbling. So I recorded her. Basically, I played the recorder, and I let it there, and that happened. Like she came there babbling. It wasn't like I placed it in front of her. It was like lying there, and she came there and she started talking. So I have more of these. I just chose some where not too much is happening, where it's relatively calm. So I wanted to have there more like just talking in a language that nobody understands.
We provided the situation that they easily can add into the.
Yeah, I don't really see it as. I see it as a collaboration of creating a fictional situation of me putting her to sleep. But that wasn't happening in that actual world of recording her. In that kind of poetic situation, that should somehow, or I would like it to be maybe present at like that, because I'm singing the lullaby while she's talking and then she stops. So that was maybe like opening of this sleep narrative.
What is interesting is also last week there was a piece that Carlos Soto Roman was showing, and in that his son was playing the guitar. And then this week hearing you know, working with your children, it's very interesting.
But when you say that, Zuzana, it's that kind of like some poetry helped you to live reality in another dimension or another kind of connection?
Yeah, or maybe also in this connection. Just
yeah, because I follow you that, yeah, that kind of playing with that you have to make sleep someone, and in a way you are like recording that stay, and then it becomes like a kind of new reality or new dimension, in a way that we are at the same time something useful, like necessary for the children, and at the same time a poem, you know? And those kind of movement in life, when the poetics of a poet becomes alive in a way, and then it can become in form of what? Are you preparing something with that, like a book or like a record or like a performance? What is your next project?
Yeah, I'm working on the collection of poems that I just printed. But for some of these poems, I have created like the sound piece. So basically, all the words that are there are part of one poem. So it's one poem more like cut or all together, but there's kind of like the whole sound on the top.
Yeah, and that is a kind of a new book, or what is the shape? Yeah, but without sound, just like reading.
Just a regular book. But I'll see, like, this, like, I like to have performances for 20 minutes with different things. And I also kind of like in this book, I have there different topics. So each poem is about a completely different topic. So some of them are very activist, some of them are more oriented like this, but it's more about kind of like contemporary world in a different way. So some of them might be also sources for some poetry later. Hi.
Hi.
Eduardo Escofet, welcome to jungle.
Hi, Zuzana.
Hello.
And hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello, Eduardo.
Of course, I'm late.
Boranit.
We're just like talking about with Zuzana about the connection between life and poetry. How about you, Edward? What is the connection between life and poetry, sound poetry?
I must say that I don't want any connection between life and poetry, just for the record.
I need like 10, 15 minutes to connect with the discussion and smoke a joint.
Okay.
I meet myself for 10 minutes and then I go deep inside the topic.
Nice. Great. Beautiful.
But nice to say hello to everyone.
Yeah, beautiful.
Hi.
I don't know, it's like maybe Martin Guy want to say something about it. That connection between some poetry and life. What do you feel? You have to open your mic, in Zoom. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Can you
Yes.
hear me? Yeah. Yes. I think there is a connection. if we want, and if we don't want, it cannot be a connection. Um, it's a matter of will in the end to find that connection. I think it is. It enriches the work. It makes it more powerful, more meaningful for oneself, and I think as a consequence for the others, those who read it or whatever, see it, watch it, listen to it or whatever.
And because I remember when your children like gave to you some cables for a birthday present.
Yeah,
My father
fantastic.
did cable to connect his sound. Like a
Yeah,
kind of they understood that you need a cable to like
yeah. My
request.
preferred thing in the world, the whole world, cables. Yeah.
I don't know what the other people think because I
Yeah,
It's very hard.
colored cables. Perfect.
how in a moment that kind of passion that we have, it connects you between, it gives you finally the key, or it brings you and it shows you that the doors, they are not closed to you. In reality, they are a little like a under open window in elsewhere, that you can connect the poetry with reality, and that brings you another kind of dimension of human being, and in a way that in Spanish is really beautiful. You have two verbs for being, have ser y estar, and then you're like a new kind of being in the same of ser, in a different way. I don't know how when you talk about your work, Zuzana, and how you connect you with your children and your baby, and like I imagine that the same like woman in the painting caves, like making like traces in the rocks to like yeah, just to tell to the children to go to bed. I don't know, the same way. And they have like 40,000 years, and they arrive to us. And anyway, if you we arrive to send that kind of emission in radio waves, because we're sure that will be like travels all around the universe, and maybe in another galaxy they will find a Zuzana Husarova, how did she fell asleep to
I don't know. I don't really know about that. No, but I also
Take-
kind of like the
Taking
idea
the
of,
planet to rest.
yes, yeah, like you can create like a parallel. Like I don't really think thought about kind of like real connection to the life or complete fiction. I thought about something more like a parallel universe that you can create. Also had there kind of like quite many notions from the literary research of heterotopy, etc., that creates a different world, but it's not completely different from yours. It's not like another universe, but it's here. It's basically like all the richness that we have here. You just have to reach for it, and you get it.
Yeah, like myth.
What?
Like myth, the best of myth. You take from what's around you. You know.
Susanna, is it really important for your children to taking them to sleep, that you really are singing the one special song they are hunting for, or is it more important to give them the feeling of the sound of the song? So could you, for example, just make some summing or sounds that just without words, would they be okay with that? If
I
you
would
didn't
wish
know?
I would wish if
Yeah.
there were any type of generalization for kids, but there are none.
Mm.
Our first one was completely fine with anything we sang, unless we sang,
Mm.
or she's really fine with any type of noise or anything.
Yeah.
But this younger one, she's like a machoist, um, like dictator. So she
Mhm.
really dictates what we have to do,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
she
yeah.
shouts. So we are just like prisoners in her own little world. She looks like an angel, but
Mm.
she has another side.
Mm.
And there you have to sing exactly for 10 seconds, one song, 10 seconds, another song, or she just starts shouting. She also likes some of the songs like Dinom Danom that you can play for her that as a sound,
Mhm.
like on Spotify. But she, for example, doesn't like men singing, so she
Yeah, yeah.
starts shouting like, "No, no, no, not that man singing. I want
Okay.
that song only interpreted by that woman."
Yeah.
Um, so she's really picky, but I don't think there's any generalization. I think any child is
So,
different.
so some kind of journey to get uh, to meet your children is maybe something like finding out the very special uh,
They also
things
react.
they
They also react
relying.
differently to different people. Like she
Yeah,
reacts
yeah, yeah.
differently to Lubo, who is
Mm.
more calming, and she reacts differently to me, who is probably from the nature less calming than Lubo. Anyway,
Mm.
so
Yeah, but that doesn't has to mean anything. It's just as it is, I
yeah,
believe.
it is exactly
I,
like
I,
we are
um,
all fine. We are all
and
fine.
I'm once met one physically psychological handicapped man that was really stuck inside of himself and only sat around and didn't move any part of his body. But then we find out that I don't remember the name, but there was one song in the radio, and then he heard it and began really joyful to dance like we have, and nobody has any ever seen before. And when the song ended, he just sank back again into himself. And every time when we played this one song, he came to life and was you could see it in his eyes and everything. This was also really great experience. And maybe one could drive a cool circle from how you are describing it, um, and just not say and could not only tell it communicating but mirroring, some kind of mirroring, and then we come back somehow to the question about the connection between poetry and life, because then we find out that how banal it is again, that what's important is the characterization of your voice, and the interaction is changing everything, and somehow there in your own nowness and freedom against the um, coming in of the language particles that are building up the reception of the world and everything and climate. Um, there is some angle how we are able to change something, and shall it be only for the moment or so? I have no point really, but associate. Yeah. Sorry. Somebody said something.
I said, bravo. It was good to hear you rant. Yeah, it's good.
But I wanted.
Sorry.
So you
Go on.
No, because we were talking about life and poetry, and I know that Zuzana, you were working also with poetry made from machines, and
Yeah.
no life making this poetry, but maybe living people reading the poetry. So maybe the poetry is, I don't know where the poetry is then, the life poetry.
I also don't think that poetry has to be influenced by life. I think there are different approaches to poetry. Like I also this whole thing was that it started from the life because I used the recording of the baby, but I then moved completely somewhere else. So I didn't want it to be about babies. I just wanted to create the situation and then move into trips, basically, metafictional trips or fictional whatever. And yeah, so we have with my husband we have a neuronal network that creates poetry. She's called Lisa Gennard. She's our third child. Yeah, and she doesn't have any life and creates poetry where some of the poets, when they hear it, they cry, which is kind of like really interesting that you get life into emotions out of a neuronal network. So everything is possible. I also kind of like the ideas of creativity or creation that are beyond anthropocentrism. So I don't think that you really need you need experience to write because it makes us human. It's if I don't know how would write a person who would be stuck in a room 4 to 4 square meters, but maybe Corona shows us how much life you need to create poetry. Maybe the best poetry of all ages will be now created during Corona times where you don't meet with anyone and just kind of create things in your head. I don't know. But yeah, there are kind of robots writing and or neuronal network writing where they have no experience and still it brings experience to the readers because of the study of receptional the aesthetics that deals with reception of the readers. So there are different approaches. I don't think that making the life as the source is the only one. I think it's one of the possible.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel that bringing it's a new kind of life. Bringing life in a computer system, or it's a different kind of composition of atoms in a word. Like carbon, like a human, we have 6 valence chemically, and silicium, like machines, they have 7 valence in a way. And that connection that we make in sound poetry, with machines and human beings or sounds from the life in Earth. Maybe
I would disagree.
Yeah?
I don't think this is life. No.
What is it for you?
No, no.
Machine.
Life is a definition. Like life needs to be able to reproduce itself, and those machines are not.
Some of them, yes. Some the right algorithm in autopoiesis, or maybe the human being, we are not reproduce ourselves from ourselves. When it's bacteries, when it's virus, we're not like autopoietic completely,
Yes, but then it's the symbiosis of humans and machines. They are in like the organism, yes, but not as a separate entity.
Maybe it's that what we're talking about is matter, but experiencing that as something that is lively and vibrating and responsive. And yeah, it was very interesting what Thomas was saying as well. I really enjoyed those thoughts that yeah, but we're talking about always our responses in between these these different configurations, but it's also about recognizing how moved we are by matter and sound and vibration and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
also I think that
yeah.
we used to put too much of our attention in the poet or the artist or the writer that is generating that piece, but and if there's any relationship with his or her emotions or biographical facts, but I mean, for example, what Zuzana showed us today, it could be a sample or another baby maybe, and I don't know, maybe we could have had a similar emotion, and I think I prefer to put the focus on the reception of on the emotions that this provokes us, and it can be made by a person, by a
We
computer.
lost you, Felipe. Where are you?
Sorry?
Great place to end.
Yeah, we lost your last sentence.
Oh, sorry. Okay. It was the robot that. No, I was saying. That,
your baby robot.
Yeah, my baby robot. No, I was saying that. I mean, one of us can read a poem written by a robot, by a software, by a child, or by a crazy people. I don't know, and it can provoke us a lot of different emotions. So I think it's so it said, like, this is interaction that is interesting, but I think that we tend to focus too much on the relationship between biographical facts and the personality of the poet and his or her poetry, and I don't think that is the most interesting part of all this process, because it's full of different interactions. I don't know how you see this, Zuzana.
Exactly.
Oh.
Nothing else. Exactly.
And what does your third daughter says? Your neurological.
She doesn't generate right now. It will take quite a lot of memory, so I just have this using open, but I let her generate quite a lot. But
can you tell me, Zuzana, can you tell us, or at least me, a bit more about this third being here? You mean it's some sort of program and it literally does things on its own? You don't have to do any input?
No. It's a neural network that we fed with 2,000 sources of either Slovak poetry or essays or any other literary sources, mostly poetic. And she learned Slovak, and she learned to write Slovak poetry. And then, as a consequence, she learned somehow Slovak. And she has a book on her own. I have it here. It's a book called Outcomes of Origin. It's called Výsledky vzniku, where like made a concept of which like how those, like what should be the title of the poem. Then she wrote based on the title.
Interesting. Yeah. So you had there was a human intervention ultimately in a couple of ways. But nevertheless, once it started generating, it did it on its own, correct?
Yes. So you started like a program, you start the program and she spills, like you define how many, but I mean, she spills some poems or text. And then I chose the ones that I found somehow interesting and then created a book out of it.
Okay. And did she stop on its own, or did you press a button?
Oh, it's somehow similar to like when you start the Zoom and switch the Zoom. So I mean, you start the program, generates, then you switch it off. It's not a living entity. It's not reproducing itself. It's closed. You start it, then you close it.
As far as you know.
Well, thinking about machine poetry, I'm also thinking about what is the other side. Would it be interesting to write poetry for machines? Maybe is anyone doing this kind of thing? I never heard of that. Do machines have a poetry side to their own? Not only producing poetry, because it's easy to produce poetry with machines. I think we are all using machines in some ways, and also in ways that work well by chance operations. I'm using a loop station very much, but a lot of things it does, and a lot of the most interesting things it does on its own, basically. I'm not really doing too much input. So that's quite easy to create something like that, but how would it be to create poetry for machines? Does anyone try that?
I know of a project by Eugenio Di Selli. He did this project where he generated a blog and then had a computer also comment on the poems or on the texts he wrote, and again comment. So the machine was reading the generated poems or texts and then comment and kind of discuss with it. So yes, Eugenio did this.
Also the William Burroughs and Geising, Katab machine and fold-in process in a way was that kind of poetry could be with random state, and that inspiration for Geising and Burroughs was the idea of Dada, Cabaret Voltaire, when they put all the papers in a kind of hat, and you choose the verse in a random way. Then I feel that kind of poetry for machine is you have a big hat in a way, and you put that kind of algorithm brings you to another kind of connections in a way that really like systematical, but our choice gave to them life in a way.
There's also in artificial intelligence, there are these special kind of neural networks, like they're called GANs, and they're kind of two neural networks. The one is generating art, and the other one is trying to find out if it's real cool art or not, and it gives feedback to the other. So if it's not cool enough, then the first one generates again, and then the second one, I only seen it for pictures, but it should be possible for poetry as well. So it's kind of the artist and the art critic, and they kind of, the art critic always says, it's not good enough, so try harder, and the first one generates again, and then the art critic again, that doesn't look like Van Gogh, you have to try again. And so both systems learn. The art critic gets better in finding out if the image looks like Van Gogh, and the other one tries to make better forgeries of Van Gogh. So that could be possible also for texts, I guess. So one machine would write a poem, and the other one would say, it's not really good poetry. So try again, and the one would generate poetry, and so on.
Then you have to know on which, on what you model it on. So what would be the thing model it on, And but if I think
it's
what
about
really
imitation in this case, yes.
Yeah, but the different thing is, for us humans, I would say, if we hear poetry, like all of us have different imaginations. Like I imagined really not a kind of lullaby with Zuzana's poem, but rather a kind of journey, a very interesting journey going on. So I had very different imagination than maybe other people because I don't have children, so it didn't really play a role. But how can you create criteria for saying this is good or not good for a machine? So how would a machine rate that? So that would be really interesting. What kind of criteria it could choose.
Dirk, I think it goes back to this thing about experience. Whatever creates it, if we get an experience from it that's profound, hopefully, moving, whatever you want, that's a good way of measuring it. We have to accept that it might not be by a human, but
Yeah, but I was thinking about a machine trying to measure or to find criteria for what is good or not good. So how do you move a machine?
But at the same time, that I think machine they don't explore the human error. The wrong movement of the human beings. That that is it still doesn't really good exploring, but machine they can determine what is the best, or for in calculus, but that kind of human inability that we make a wrong movement, and that movement becomes marvelous in a way, like
Yeah.
how I say James Bond say every plan have to fail to be perfect in a way, and that. And I remember like when Kasparov, he plays chess with Big Blue. I don't know, the Baby Blue. I don't remember the name of that computer. Like in the final 19th or beginning of the 20th century, and the first match, the computer wins to Kasparov. But the second one, and as Kasparov studied the machine, and he asked again to play with it, with the new generation of the more powerful machine to analyze all the checks movement like 10 human brains could be. And Kasparov won that game because he played to the wrong movement, and that machine became crazy. He played like a stupid movement in I don't know, how to destroy his own theory, and that machine became like he cannot allow in a way. And that is maybe that our real simple singularity into universal poetry, that kind of human wrong movement that we make with language or with sounds, that becomes something new, something communicable to the other words. I don't know. Wait, say Luna Negri, I'm there.
Hey, hello. Happy birthday, Martini.
Yeah, happy birthday.
What do you think about that?
Hey.
I was thinking about what you said before about the robots or machines being moved by a poem, for example. I was thinking it would be interesting to try to do something, because you would have to measure those effects. For example, you could tell. I mean, when some music is slow, or when some music is faster, or when there's a minor scale or a major scale. I mean, you can, in music at least, you can find a lot of parameters to define some kind of emotion, and in fact, lots of musicians have played with those parameters. I mean, in electronic music, you can choose different BPMs or different sounds if you want to move the people to some kind of consciousness or craziness or whatever. But it would be funny, I think, to like draw some. Put some numbers to those emotions and see what happens with robots, because I mean I like very much when you try to put numbers to things that are very vague and very difficult to calculate. I don't know, maybe we can try something something like that.
But why? This is the question.
Just to have fun.
I mean, dealing with emotions it's a mess.
Yeah.
I don't want a machine to deal with it, with all this mess. I don't know.
Yeah, but
maybe the question is,
like maybe the machine will love it.
Maybe.
And I don't want. Maybe.
But like the publicists and the people of marketing are always calculating our emotions, and they design the things to that color, that sound, that shape to grab you.
I even read about this system they were developing because it's kind of a system to estimate if a book manuscript is going to be this % a hit. Yeah, I just read it. I don't know if it works really, but they developed something like that. So if it's kind of, but of course that's measurable because you have, I don't know, past novels that were kind of great and how many books they sold. So that's kind of a value, and they just train this thing. Yeah. But I also think like the things we're talking about, poetry that moves us is sometimes I have the feeling it's also an acquired taste, because I don't know, one of the most famous poets or most successful poets I don't know if you know Rupi Kaur. She's an Instagram star, and if you read her poetry, it's really horrible, I think. But it's, I don't know, she sells books in the millions, and it's maybe the most successful poet ever. I don't know, but it's people. So a lot of people like it. I hate it. I think it's not really
Sorry,
good.
how is she called?
Hmm?
What's the name of that poet?
I can type it in the chat.
Yeah, it's Rupi Kaur, something like that. I mean, she's everywhere in every bookstore.
Yeah, she's an Instagram star, and she has a lot of followers, of course. And yeah, it's kind of really banal poetry in my opinion, but so a lot of people like it, and we are. I don't know if we are to judge what moves people. I don't think so.
Well, the logical stage then is, big capitalists having a program, a computer, a neural network or whatnot that just creates kind of poetry which sells by the millions. I mean, it probably will happen. It's sort of inevitable.
Of course, it already happens probably. They train it with.
I think in pop music, there's a lot of this going on. I mean, there are some standards of how a great pop single should sound. I mean, in terms of the mix, in terms of the instrument, the duration. I mean, there are standards. Of course, there are some music that doesn't meet those standards and people like it. But I mean, talking about really mainstream music. Oh, sorry, again, I'm getting lost. I was.
Where did you go?
I don't know. Inside my very loud internet connection. No, I was saying that in pop music you can see that there are very specific standards of length and kind of sound, etc. So I think in a way they're doing. Also, for example, nowadays, if you have a tune and you want to master it, of course you can send it to a sound engineer, but at the same time you can put it in some software, some artificial intelligence softwares. They can tell the style of your music and they can master in a way that meets that standard. So, I mean, it's integrating now, I think, for good or bad.
Yeah, but at the same time,
Hello?
yeah, Luna,
Sorry.
go on, Luna.
No, I just wanted to say to Zuzana, thank you for the performance and everything.
Thank
That was
you.
lovely. But I also wanted to ask you, how do you relate with poetry in terms of languages? Because you were saying about your third baby that you feed her the Slovak language, and I just wonder if you feed her other languages as well. But also in your own practice, if you, I don't know how you work with the English and the Slovak and maybe other languages. Do you translate yourself, and do you play with your third baby in other languages as well? Like, yeah, what's your relation with languages and translation in your own practice?
Yeah, use quite a lot of multilingualism in the poetry. So I combine English, Slovak, sometimes Czech, sometimes German and English and Slovak. So in different projects differently, but I like multilingualism in general. I prefer not to translate myself, but sometimes I have to. So sometimes I do it. And regarding the kids, I spoke to the first one quite a lot in English. So I taught her English, and also the first books that I read for her were only English. She also goes to English kindergarten, so it means she speaks English. With the other one, it's a little bit more difficult because the Slovak environment is already there. So with the first one, you create the environment, but the second one, she gets into the environment and everybody talking to her in Slovak. So she doesn't really speak English as the first one did, but we'll see when she goes to kindergarten because we'll see. But I mean, the first one really picks up languages really quickly. Like now we have been here for like 1.5 months, and she already speaks Czech. So I mean, Slovak and Czech are very, very similar, but I mean, still, like she answers in Czech and she talks to us in Czech and she talks to other people in Czech. So the kids are quite flexible regarding languages. And also, I'm quite also interested in the nonce words, like in the language that isn't language yet, like Julia Kristeva's ideas of what is this kind of language before the language happens. And Deleuze has it as well.
Sorry, I interrupt you. They call it, Kristeva called that the Cora semiotic. You know,
Yes. Yeah, semiotic Cora, yeah. So yeah, I've been kind of exploring this as well, like thinking about the expression that is before or beyond the language, but how you express it in a linguistic way. So therefore, kind of the language poetry is extremely interesting because there you can do it. There you can kind of imitate the sounds or create new sounds that somehow give you this idea of prelingual.
Yeah, like a proto language that it comes between the desire, the feeling, and expression. No, it's like it's a kind of expression of an impression. Like maybe like a trace, the first trace, you know. We visit with Andres the caves that this summer in Cognac, and all the paintings that are there, they are not in the upper side for other people like look at them. They are in the loud side because when you talk in that space, you are really resounding something. You know? And then I think it's a kind of vinyl pressure in the rocks, and maybe we can just like put a microphone in that space of shapes of animals. We think that I like horses, but the other thing than horses in a way. You know? We can go to perceive that, and I imagine how the people would perceive our work in you know in another dimension, in another galaxy, or another time. How you feel the people would appreciate your work, Zuzana, in like Gamma Cassiopeia? I don't know.
I cannot really relate to Gamma Cassiopeia, so I don't really know.
Or maybe in the infra world, you know, in the center of the earth, when all the vibration when you're making on your footsteps, or
like what is that perceives this? Like what is there that could perceive you? So it's not only the space itself. I think it's more like the beings that perceive something. So like what is in the middle of the earth that perceives your work? That is what I'm more interested in than just the environment. Like who are they? What it is? What you can deliver to them in different ways that maybe vibrates.
Can you do one vibration to communicate with the center of the earth?
I don't think so.
And that we can start the collective.
No, you do it.
Yeah,
I do it, and then we learn from you.
I was going to propose that we can sing "Happy Birthday" to Martin, but in a sound poetry way. I mean, whoever you like in whichever language you you want to use. I will try Slovak. I'll see. Okay. That was like Marilyn Monroe's "Happy Birthday."
No, it was like Marilyn Monroe from the center of the earth.
Marilyn Porros.
Marilyn Manson.
Exactly.
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Porros.
Marilyn Burroughs.
Marilyn Burroughs.
Marilyn
William Burroughs. William Burroughs. Hay un Santo Martín de Porras. Martín de Porros.
Martín de perras. De
Martín
pirras.
de Pirras. Martín de Parras.
Perros.
Na ro na ro na ro ni na ye ni na ro ye
Na ro ge 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 na na ro ge na ro ge ge na ge na ro
Oh.
Niin. Pyjama. Pyjama is.
the fiction
So,
is inside outside
niin.
fiction
Sa.
inside
Niin. 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 Sa. 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 Niin. Niin. Da. Sit. Niin. Pyjama is. Niin. Niin. Pi. Pi. Ne. Si. Yeah. Yeah. Jean.
Happy birthday, Mars. Happy birthday, Jupiter. Happy birthday, Uranus. Can you move a little bit forward, 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 forward? Can you move? Can you alter that? Can you alter that? Can you move a little bit back, a little bit forward, forward, forward? Can you move a little bit forward, a little bit back, a little bit back? You sound like a rabbit. You sound like Fiction, fact, fiction.
Bonk.
Fact, fiction.
Fact, fiction, fuck, fiction, fact,
Fuck,
fiction,
fiction.
fuck, fiction, fact,
Fact,
fiction, fuck,
fiction.
Bomb.
fact, fiction, fuck,
Fiction, fuck.
fic, fic,
Palm. Palm.
fic, fiction,
Tree.
fuck, fucked,
Fiction.
Bomb.
fic, fiction, fiction, fuck,
Fiction.
Green. Yellow.
fact, fiction, fuck,
Bomb.
fuck, fiction,
Fiction, fuck.
Bomb.
fiction, fiction, fiction,
It's a
fake, fiction, faith, faith, fiction, 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 fact, fiction,
És
fiction,
tot allò que és tot allò és que és tot allò
este para allá,
que
este para allá,
Este pa' acá,
este para allá,
este pa' acá,
reclamen
este para allá,
este pa' acá,
és
este para allá,
este patuca,
tot allò que
este patico,
reclamen
este
de
patuca,
dia,
panto,
de nit, és
esperanto, espora,
tot allò
espera,
és
esperpento,
que reclamen
esperpento,
es predicción,
són res que té
sí, esa no,
esa sí,
esa sí,
esa
esa
sí,
no,
esa no, esa sí, esa no,
esa sí, esa no,
esa
esa sí,
Now,
is a is a is a is a
egg.
AI is AI is AI is 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 es entre entre es filosofía es espía espía este día. Espectro. Es la imagen que se obtiene separando las radiaciones electromagnéticas compuestas por rayos X luminosos e infravioletas. Tan gente, tan gente, tan gente, tan gente, tan gente. Agua, go, go,
Oh,
go,
oh,
go.
oh,
Agua,
oh, La A de la U a la A. De la U a la A. De la U a la A. O A. O.
Coerción, colisión, colectivo, comunista, comercial, agua, agua, operativo,
Cooperativa.
cooperativa,
Cooperativa.
corporativa, colectiva, coleóptera.
Are you happy, Martin?
Bravo. Happy birthday, Martin.
At least it's the longest happy birthday I've ever heard.
No, thank you.
In all languages.
All possible. Even,
All possible languages.
even other galaxies.
Thank you all. Thank you, Zuzana.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zuzana.
Thank you,
Was
everyone.
great hearing you and seeing you again. And
Yeah,
say
I'm
hi
looking
to
forward to seeing.
and your kids, your 3 kids.
The last one is the least complicated.
Now we start the
Anyway.
after hour. After hour now.
After hour.
Extended
After
cachondeo.
after party.
Extended cachondeo. Eduardo Escofet, Dixit. Start from now. And maybe we can stop recording and just or
Stop
we
recording
continue.
and see you next week.
No.